Hey, it's Josh at the range of Ballantyne. Just wanted to go over a few things regarding dry fire. We get a lot of shooters that want to stay proficient with their firearm, but they don't have enough time to get to the range often enough, and I always encourage getting some good dry fire drills in. All right, whenever you're doing dry fire drills at home, the biggest thing to do is make sure your firearm is always unloaded and you have no ammunition in your magazine and your chambers are always empty. So if you have a pistol that you keep at home that you use mainly, that you keep rounds in, it's best just to move that to a totally different room and either work with an empty gun or ensure the only thing that you have inside of the room is an empty magazine. So as I showed here, we're empty, nothing in the room. And whether you're working this with concealed carry or an outside the waistband holster or something like the Safariland, a good drill to start with, especially for new shooters, is just a sight acquisition drill. So for that, all we're really doing is we're just getting used to the muscle memory of reaching for your weapon, pulling it up in a safe manner, and getting it on target. The way that you dry fire is gonna build that muscle memory, so I always tell people to have good habits when you dry fire. If you're getting in the habit of putting your trigger finger on the gun, as soon as you pull it up, you're building and reinforcing bad habits. We're not doing that. So as you're going through your dry fire drills, make sure you're intentionally keeping your finger off the trigger until you find your sight picture, and then you can slowly pull it to it. As you're doing this, you have to think about your stance, your grip, and your trigger pull. As you're going through your trigger pull, you're making sure for the dry fire drill, you're pulling your trigger to the wall and you're letting it rest there before you snap the trigger. This builds good follow through, and as soon as you're doing that, you're pinning the trigger all the way back. You're not releasing it. You're not snapping the gun. You're pinning the trigger back, and you're getting good follow through with your firearm. Once you're done with that, if you need to, you could re-rack your gun, pull the hammer back, and reset yourself. It's always a good idea when you're doing these drills to double check and triple check your chambers. There's no such thing as being too safe. So a full dry fire drill of sight acquisition looks something a little bit like this. Pulling it up, getting on sight, pulling it to the wall, and locking it in. Pulling your hammer back or rechambering it if you have a striker fire weapon, reholstering and resetting yourself. Again, you're worrying about trigger pull, sight picture, and stance. Getting a good stance, you're leaning into it. A lot of times for sight acquisition, sometimes it's good just to repeat that over and over. Once you start getting comfortable with this, you start working on that trigger pull. Keep pressing it, holding it back, and resetting yourself. Once you get used to that, you can start working on multiple targets. If you're doing this in your house, you could either put paper targets up, you can find 2 points on the wall, you can find picture frames, you can find light switches, whatever you need to do. Where you find one, bring the trigger to the wall, find the other one, bring the trigger to the wall. That's a very good beginner dry fire drill. Of course, going to the range is another part of it, reinforcing actual recoil control, recoil management and mitigation, and making sure you're accurate with your weapon, whether you're setting sights or whatever you need to. So make sure you get out of the range, get that actual practice, and as always, be safe, have fun, and train often.